against me.
Good afternoon, Mr. Marple.
Good afternoon, and I think we should start off the conversation with... No, I'm not moving into your jurisdiction. That's what we challenge.
We'll discuss that, but wait a minute. Who's covering for the state? Mary Ann's coming. Okay. I was just going to suggest that it might be more comfortable for you. If you want to come to the table, I will not acknowledge that as your accepting jurisdiction, but it just might be easier for you to be at the table. You could spread out more easily.
I hear what you're saying, but I prefer to stand
All
here.
right, very good. That's fine.
In fact, as I said, I don't understand why I'm even here. Because a week before we had the last conversation, I disposited with your with your clerk, who was very gracious and copied all the information, which precluded even having the last encounter here. I think, if I remember correctly, I brought that up, and you told me, well, I didn't get a chance to read it because you just got it that day. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I remember our conversation, and at that point it had been scheduled for trial, and what you raised was basically an issue, a motion to dismiss, claiming that the court had no jurisdiction. And so we continued it to allow the state the opportunity, in case they wanted to file any pleadings, to discuss that matter. And I just want to ask you, because there were some other documents that you filed today.
That's
so I had an opportunity to review some of them, but not all of them. And I just want to see if I'm understanding your argument. And stop me if I'm incorrect, but if I understand your argument, it is that you are not a citizen of the state of New Hampshire, you are a citizen of America, and that because that is the federal law governs and not state law, is that?
You're talking about something which I think I can elaborate on.
Okay.
Back, and we went back, we should have copies of the federal statute, 15 statutes at large, which is documented in all of my affidavits. 15 statutes at large was passed by Congress on the 27th day of July in 1868. Congress was doing that for the specific purpose of providing, as you will see, the difference between an American citizen and a United States citizen. And that is what they were establishing, because on the following day, which was the 28th of July, they adopted the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was a second-class citizenship. The second-class citizenship that was being adopted by the SETI Trust. That 14th Amendment is not an actual amendment, it's a SETI Trust, which was created by Congress in order to give second-class citizenship to the slave blacks. The free blacks already had citizenship. Now, if you read your Constitution, which is my technical manual for all legislatures and other public service, and I refer to this very specifically, and I will in a moment, the Constitution, being the supreme law of the land, Article 6, Paragraph 2 is very specific. It says, this Constitution, all laws be pursued as the supreme law of the land. That's the first mandate. The second is, the judges in every state are bound thereby. And perhaps the most important one is the closing clause, which says, anything in the constitutional laws of the several states which is contrary to the Constitution, it's notwithstanding. So that's a very important supremacy clause mandate. Now, in connection with the New Hampshire Constitution, which I dearly love and perhaps consider it the most effective piece of documentation that was ever created by the minds of man. In fact, our Constitution, which preceded the United States Constitution by 5 years, was much of what Thomas Jefferson wrote into it. In fact, the Second Amendment wouldn't be there because the New Hampshire Constitution, believe it or not, and I'm a history buff, the New Hampshire Constitution was a conditional ratification. And a conditional ratification is that Congress would pass the Second Amendment. So New Hampshire can claim this, the celebrity for being the only state to put the Second Amendment into our Constitution, which I think the wise citizens of New Hampshire back then were pretty wise. When they conducted this Constitution, I invoke all of the Bill of Rights from 1 through 39 in any discussion that I have. And my discussion with you is I'm not making any motions, because you only make a motion toward this jurisdiction, and you don't have any jurisdiction. And the reason you don't is because there's nearly dicit. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, this is Latin. He doesn't answer. N-I-A-H-I-L, dicit, D-I-C-I-T. Those judgments already exist at the Secretary of State's office, and I gave you some of this, much more here. I've done this.
Let's just interrupt you for a minute. So, I just want to be clear, and I understand what you're saying as far as you're not filing a motion, you're not even saying that, but you're just challenging the court's jurisdiction to even have this conversation. But my question is, when I looked at some of the documents, there were a lot of documents talking about foreign government. And so are you saying, and that the foreign government doesn't trump, that the federal government trumps,
Thank you very much.
the federal government trumps a foreign government? So are you saying that the state of New Hampshire would be considered a foreign government as related to the United States government?
An oath purgatory is very explanatory. The oath purgatory, as it actually says there, I deal in gold and silver. It says that. And Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution is very specific. It states that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debt. And it further states that no state can, quote, impair the obligation of the contract. The contract is the oath purgatory. So you can't change that.
All right, I need to follow a thread. Let's start with the state of New Hampshire at some point gave you a driver's license. Is that correct? Or you applied for a driver's license, or you had a driver's license? Is that correct?
The state of New Hampshire is a municipal corporation. Part two of our Constitution is, quote, form of government. The form of government is the charter of the municipal corporation that was created as the state of New Hampshire to do the business of the republic.
Okay.
We pledge allegiance to the republic, not a democracy.
If you answer my question, it would be very helpful if you would. Do you agree that at some point you had a New Hampshire driver's license?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, one of the charges is that your license to operate the state of New Hampshire was suspended. So if it was suspended, that means at some point you had a valid driver's license. And
Where was it suspended?
Well, my question is, did you ever have a New Hampshire driver's license?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
However, that was not a contract that I entered into knowingly, willingly, intentionally. I entered into it with a reservation of rights. And that's why everywhere I put my signature, they wouldn't believe me. It's TDN. If you look, if you're going to go, by the way, I have a contract with Dartmouth Medical to accept the remains of this human body here for their study and salvage, whatever they can salvage. I have 20/20 vision. I'm in my 86th year with 20/20 vision, so I have taken care of it as best I could. But my body has been donated, and it's on my license here. And I was very upset when they took that so-called license because it's hinged to it. Do you have it in front of you? Because I want that to be returned. That's my property.
I don't have the license.
Well, somebody's got it here. Because this gentleman right here showed it to me the last time I was here.
Mr. Marple, I'm trying to just kind of drill down to the issues. So I understand that at some point you did have a driver's license, but that kind of under protest you accepted it, but said basically the state didn't really have the right to require you to have a license. Am I understanding that part of the argument? Do you understand my question?
No, I don't.
All right. So what you said to me was, you noted when you got your driver's license, your reservation of rights. Okay, Mr. Marple, please stay focused, please, because there's other cases that we need to do today. I want to give you your full hearing, but I'm just trying to, as I said, drill down to the issue, because I just want to be clear, what we have here today is, and I know you disputed it, but there's two charges that have been lodged against you. One is for driving after suspension, and one is for showing a driver's license when it had been suspended. So all I'm trying to figure out right now is, I'm trying to determine if I'm understanding your argument about the court not having jurisdiction.
Okay.
And is it that the court does not have jurisdiction?
No, the way you've explained it is not what happened. You have a documentation with.
Are you sure you don't want to come and use this table so you don't drop it? I promise you I'm not going to acknowledge it as you say.
What I am obligated to do, and I'll do it right now so it's on the record. Title 18, Section 4 is entitled Misprision of Felony. I have an obligation and a duty to tell you of any felony that has been committed in this state. The municipal, let's call him justice, if you will, is actually the magistrate of the Candia Court committed, and you have a copy of it. Thank you very much.
I did see that.
Did you see that? All right. I did not submit jurisdiction to that. I sent a copy of an affidavit that had been filed with Earl Sweeney about 4 or 5 months before. Earl Sweeney neglected. Beg your pardon?
I've read all that, but what I'm,
Well, that right there is a.
what I'm trying to understand is that's a different, I mean, are you arguing that the same jurisdiction argument you made in Candia is what you're arguing here today? I'm trying to figure out how the Candia issue is relevant to what we're talking about today.
I don't argue that. I proceed with decisions. I have over 26. I can read them off, or if I can give them to you if you'd like.
It might be something I already have. What is
And
it?
this is unrebutted affidavits that have to be taken by you as fact, not fiction, but fact.
And are you talking about the affidavit that you submitted to Earl Sweeney?
And all the others, there's about 5 of them, and they ignore them.
Can I ask you now, how is that related to whether this court has jurisdiction over you today?
Because it was fraud perpetrated by public servants.
And what
The
was
United
that?
States versus Tweel, T-W-E-E-L, states that silence, when there's a duty to speak and they don't speak, that's fraud.
Okay, but what, I'm missing the link of how that allegation of fraud, which has nothing to do with Concord Court and your driver's license, that I'm understanding it, how does that issue affect the jurisdiction in the court today? That's what the link I'm not understanding.
Okay, let's try it this way. There's horses and zebras. One's a horse and one's a zebra. And you're mixing 2 of them together. We don't have that here. Administrative law is completely different from the common law. My contract, which is the Oath Purgatory, is common law. That has supremacy. In common law, truth as expressed in an affidavit, has supremacy. That's over 5,000 years old.
When you're talking about the contract, do
That's
you
correct.
mean your contract with the state to have a driver's license?
No, it's not a contract.
What contract are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Oath Purgatory.
Okay.
That's the controlling contract.
And how is that related to whether your driver's license was suspended?
All right, that's a completely different issue. What occurred in 1966 under the aegis of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the last vestige of lawful money was removed. That's what silver. Silver was taken out of circulation. Roosevelt took the gold, BJ took the silver. So we had none. We the people had nothing to continue business. So Congress enacted what is known familiarly as the Tax Lien Act of 1966. That's Public Law 719. And Public Law 719 created the term discharge. So now we can discharge our obligations using commercial paper, such as the Federal Reserve notes, which are debt instruments. They're not money.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but I'm just trying to get you back on track because I understand your gold and silver argument. I do understand that. I've actually dealt with you on that issue before in a different context. But that, I'm going to ask you to try and limit your remarks to, again, how the court why the court doesn't have jurisdiction over the issue of whether you had a valid driver's license or not.
Because of the felony perpetrated by the magistrate in the Candia court.
Okay.
And you have the written evidence, what he did. I'm going to give it to you right now. I want him prosecuted for violation of 2018, your witnesses, the United States Code,
So are you saying,
2071.
Let her finish, please, sir.
are you saying that he took ordered your driver's license suspended?
Yes, that's correct. He created a fraud.
All right, thank you. So,
Do you,
I'm with you now.
you do understand that?
All right, so Judge Francois, I'm going to say, I don't want to say illegally, but without authority, is the one who suspended your driver's license.
No, what he did was he created actually it's a fiction of an indebtedness, that I was indebted to pay, I don't know, $107 or whatever it was.
He didn't pay the fine, so.
And he sent that to motor vehicle.
Okay.
And the other affidavits were with motor vehicle too, and they had the opportunity to do it and they didn't.
All right, so here, I think I'm with you. Judge Francois imposed a fine in Candia District Court. The fine was not paid.
No, I never found to pay,
All right, well,
because I never gave him jurisdiction.
Right, I understand that.
Okay.
This is all what the court did without your acquiescence to it. A fine was imposed against you. I understand you dispute the validity of that. The fine was not paid. Judge Francois had your license suspended ordered your license suspended because you would not pay the fine.
Motor vehicle acted on the fraudulent information that the magistrate sent to them.
And so this court does not have jurisdiction because your license was not properly suspended because.
Thank you. I think you have it.
Okay, and because of his fraud on the court. So basically, anything from there that flows this way, there's.
Fraud violates all.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
There's several cases on that. Incidentally, one of my favorite is Hale versus Henkel. And Hale versus Henkel supports my Oath Purgatory.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask you to have a seat and I'll hear the state's response. Then if there's anything further that you wish to add, I'll give you that opportunity. Go ahead, Attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to clarify one matter for the court, the state was unable to provide any sort of written response. I never received any sort of motion, and I understand what he's saying today in terms of not filing a motion because he doesn't recognize the jurisdiction. The state's not trying to be difficult in terms of not being able to give their side of this particular argument, but there was nothing for the state to be able to present to the court. I would just submit that, consistent with the New Hampshire Constitution and the RSAs that have been passed by the legislature of the state of New Hampshire, that this court does have jurisdiction to be able to handle this. The state of New Hampshire is very explicit that every person who operates a motor vehicle upon the ways of this state shall do so while properly licensed, and if not, shall be then subject to various punishments. 263:1, the defendant hasn't been charged with that, but that is that a license is required, is that no person shall drive any motor vehicle upon any way in the state unless such person has a valid driver's license. So to start from there, in terms of the prior conviction, I'm not here to argue the validity or non-validity of that particular conviction in front of Judge Francois, but if an individual wishes to attack a prior conviction, the way to do so is not in the court that is now exercising jurisdiction over that particular individual. It would be incumbent upon the defendant to try to file some sort of motion to have that conviction vacated. Otherwise, consistent with the New Hampshire Constitution and the RSAs of the state, a conviction out of that district court would be valid and can be considered in this court as well as being a valid conviction for general purposes of the New Hampshire criminal justice system, as well as specifically the motor vehicle code that is part of the jurisdiction that this court does have the authority to rule over. So based on those items, the state would submit that this court does have jurisdiction, that this matter should be allowed to proceed to trial, that the defendant obviously would be free to cross-examine the witnesses as well as put on the defense that he feels he's entitled to, but the state feels that there are no grounds upon which the state could deny, the court could deny the state's ability to be able to proceed with this motor vehicle matter.
Thank you. Mr. Marple, with respect to the matters in Candia, once the order was issued out of Candia to suspend your license for non-payment of fines, is that when you then filed your affidavits with Earl Sweeney and the other people? I'm sorry, did you want to hear my question or were you distracted?
This is the original affidavit, was sent certified mail to the Candia,
Okay.
and I would like to have you have a copy of it, see, because it's date stamped with the Secretary of State would have it.
All right, can you please show that to me? I might have it in the documents that you sent, but that is something I would be interested in. So, once Judge Lafrancois took his action, you filed this affidavit?
That was filed before.
Okay.
And it was about 5 months after that, I got a notification from the Candia court to appear. That's what was sent to them. They refused to accept it. You see the date stamp, return receipt, and all that?
They sent it back to you?
No, he sent back, well, you saw what he sent back, because I never gave him jurisdiction. And what he did was I tried to educate him. But he showed his ignorance when he put his signature and said, motion denied. I didn't make a motion. He was using, in fact, you know, that brings up another thing I made at this time. And because I didn't understand what you have to say here. You say, the defendant appeared in court for his arraignment. Well, Article 15 defines me as the accused. And I would respectfully request that you correct the record and put in the accused appeared.
I'm fine doing that.
And following that, you entered a plea. Well, a plea suggests that I have given jurisdiction. You don't have no authority. My name is my property, and it has a common law copyright. And anyone who uses my name has got to ask me for permission to use it. And so there's no joinder between me and the answer is yes, which is on that so-called license. That's all capitalized. That's an answer test, a fiction. If you look at your checkbook, you can prove it to yourself because your check will have your name in all capital letters. And if you use a magnifying glass, I have one in my pocket, you will see that the signature line on your check is microprint. And it says authorized signature, authorized signature, authorized signature. Can't see it with the naked eye. This is deception. By what? Corporations. And that's why your name is in all capital letters. Because the government style name states right there clearly that when you're addressing a fiction, you use capital. And we have a little problem.
For you. After you received Judge Lafrancois', we'll say his comments, because I understand you're saying he looked at it as a motion and he denied it, and you're saying it wasn't a motion. Did you file any appeal with the New Hampshire Supreme Court on that motion?
Did I file what?
An appeal to the New Hampshire Supreme
No,
Court?
I don't appeal to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
What I did, though, is I filed the affidavits with the clerk of the Supreme Court, and I have 2 documents on her.
You did.
She has actually committed obstruction of justice. If you go to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 55 is very specific, and it says when any clerk of court receives an affidavit or other, she is to immediately schedule that for a summary judgment. And she didn't do it.
And that didn't happen.
So that's another pending issue which I will be addressing very shortly.
All right, very good. I understand your.
Now, you understand, I would respectfully request you correct.
I will do that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that courtesy. Now, I have here my research on stare decisis of over probably just 29 or 30 of affidavits must be correct. Now, again, where I find, and as you know, I am on my fourth term as a legislator. I've been targeted because they have a TB after my name, troublemaker. Why? Because I insist that the Constitution be adhered to, and it's not. I had a bill in the last legislature to abolish the Department of Motor Vehicles Title Bureau. The Title Bureau is the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on free people.
Mr. Marple, I appreciate hearing your comments, but what you're talking about now is not related to the issue that I'm trying to decide today.
I understand, but my point, I think I have made it clear, is my oath purgatory is the controlling contract.
And I understand.
And that cannot be violated. Article 1, Section 10 says no contract can be abused. It's a constitutional right.
I now understand your argument. I'm going to take this under advisement because I do want to review more clearly, more closely, especially your affidavits. And I will issue my order once I've had an opportunity to.
If you need any more, I have much more here, but I didn't want to overwhelm them. Now people will say, why did you pay the $100? You wouldn't have this. It's a principle involved, and it's justice. Thank you. So what do you think?